Welcome to another Oneserve Talk Podcast. I'm Stuart and I'm joined today by Oneserve Chief Executive Chris Proctor. We're discussing the importance of good data to the social housing sector and why it is important for achieving compliance and therefore risk management for housing associations. Hi Chris and welcome back.
Hi Stuart, thank you very much.
So Chris, let's just turn the discussion on its head to start. What do you define as bad data and how detrimental can this be for a housing association?
Well, it's a really important question and it's an often misunderstood point. To put it simply, bad data is essentially any data that has quality issues, such as being inaccurate, incomplete, inconsistent, or duplicated data that's unstructured. Now, we typically understand that if the data is wrong, it's bad data, but we often miss the point that the unstructured data, i.e. is it easily accessed, is there well-defined structure, does it comply to a defined model? And if the answer is no, and in many instances it is, whether you want to believe it or not, you are making bad decisions on any data. So any data that goes in that is bad, you are going to be making bad decisions. And in terms of how detrimental that could be, well, I think you only have to look at the current situation. I don't think it's possible to really overstate how detrimental it can be. I mean, look at Grenfell, for example, look at the death of Afwab Ishaq as another. I'm not trying to be over dramatic here, but it really highlights the fact that if you do not have good data or no data, then you are going to be making bad or not decisions at all. And I think the biggest issue in many cases is the data simply isn't there and it's data that's not been recorded or isn't accessible or it's been lost.
So bad data is so bad that it might not even exist. I guess that's what you're saying.
Yeah, very much so.
And we've seen a raft of headlines recently about housing associations finding themselves non-compliant because the records have been lacking. For example, gas safety checks have not been carried out. So if I was a housing association chief or a director of asset management sat with you today, what would you be saying to me in terms of good data and what that would look like?
Bear with me on this one. There's a film from the early 2000s called Training Day. And in that film, there's a line. And the line is, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. And for me, that's pretty much sums up most, if not all, discussions regarding data. Let me put it this another way. I would probably ask them how comfortable and confident they would be that a young child isn't going to die in one of their properties because of the state that it's in. I would probably ask them how comfortable and confident they felt sat in front of the regulator using that data to demonstrate and evidence that those homes are safe and up to standard. Now, I'm being hard and being aggressive here, but there's a really good point. Good data is simply bad data until it can be proved otherwise. So it's something that's so simple, but it's something that's criminally overlooked. And as a result, we end up with these catastrophes that shouldn't be happening. Good data is simple. Good data is data that is accurate. It is complete. It's reliable. It's relevant and it's current. And it's data that's stored and structured in a way that can be used to provide meaningful insight. Without these, frankly, a landlord cannot undertake its basic functions with any confidence, let alone be compliant in any way, shape or form.
So again, what you're saying, I think, is good data is critical to achieving that compliance. But how easy or difficult is that to achieve? Perhaps it's worth just you talking through what you do with Oneserve and how that's been supporting housing associations to achieve good data.
Yeah, sure. So firstly, and probably most importantly, we only focus on housing. It's where we spend all our time. It's when we spend all our product investment. Now, why is that important? Well, the housing sector has a truly unique set of challenges and increasingly very specific legal regulations. They're very different from the challenges and regulations faced by care providers or logistics providers or utility providers, and they need to be treated and understood as such. Now, as a dedicated housing expert, it is all we focus on, and we understand these intricacies, and we have developed and committed to continue developing to support the sector to solve these challenges and comply with the emerging regulations. Now, I'm not going to say that this is easy and can be solved with a magic wand, but a problem shared is a problem halved. And that's why people will partner with us, because we understand the sector, we understand the challenges, we understand what they need to do, and both that from a theoretical point of view, but from a practical point of view as well. They know we can support them, and they know to us they're not just a logo, they're not just a name that we want to onboard, they're someone we really care about. And that's one of the reasons we're quite picky over who we work with. We have a vested interest in supporting them, helping them. And I think secondly, it's about our system modernity, shall we say. And what I mean by that is that we're a modern cloud-based system. We've never been an on-premise system. We've never had to think in that way. We think very differently. Our system works very differently. And key tenets of that, things like data integrity, data transportability, have always been at the very core of what we do, that ability to move data from one place to another, from one system to another. We've not had some of those old incumbent problems of transportability and integrity. Moving data from one system to another should never be a problem. And for us and, many other modern systems like ourselves, it's not. Now, that's vital to preserve the integrity of the data and the source of the truth, which allows you to make good decisions and ensure that your operations are compliant and that your residents, the people that you're looking after, are protected. And the world of housing is changing. Within a 24-month window, multiple acts will and have come into force, completely changing the regulatory landscape. The sector needs that dedicated commitment from systems and providers like Oneserve to help ensure they're collecting good data that allows them to get the right insights and make the right decisions. And in many respects, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I could talk about all the intricacies of the system, but I think first and foremost, the system does everything you would expect a modern, dedicated housing solution to do. And that's what we do.
Well, thanks for that, Chris. And just to finish, one piece of advice you would give a housing association facing data issues?
I think don't take anything for granted, and don't think that just because the past hasn't been perfect, the future can't be. There's that old adage of, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time is now. And I think that's very true when it comes to data and it comes to compliance. The regulatory landscape is changing and will continue to change. The pressures and the challenges will grow, and that's increasingly clear. But the decisions they need to make are all held within their data. And the sooner they can get good, actionable data, the faster they can make the right decisions.
I'm just going to slip in another question here, Chris. Totally off subject, but you referenced it. Training Day, was it Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke?
It was, yeah.
Great movie.
It was.
And on that note, let's finish. So the key message really coming out of the discussion today seems to be good data is key to that effective risk management and compliance in social housing. This is obviously going to be an ongoing discussion as the sector grapples with compliance and more intense scrutiny from the regulator. Chris, we'll catch up about this again. And thank you today.
Thank you very much, Stuart.
And thanks to all our listeners.